Mega Man 3. That's it. That's all I have to say. This game had a very interesting and chaotic development process. I know the hardcore Mega Man fans already know this information, but I'm still gonna reiterate it for the people in the back. After the massive success of Mega Man 2, Capcom recognized the potential of their beloved Blue Bomber. As a result, they provided the Mega Man team with full support and funding for the development of the sequel, back in the days when they started to care. Unfortunately, even with the support, the team still encountered several unexpected challenges in its development process. For starters, the lead supervisor Akira Kitamura left Capcom during the development to make his own game, Kokoron. As a result, it left character designer Keiji Inafune to take most of the responsibilities from Kitamura's role. Furthermore, someone had to take on the directorial mantle after Kitamura's departure, someone who was appointed as Inafune's superior for the project. That person was Masayoshi Kurokawa. This decision would soon be questionable, however, as Inafune would later state, and I quote, his new superior didn't really understand Mega Man the way his predecessor did, which then led to Kurokawa leaving production before the game was finished, thus dumping most of the responsibilities to Inafune. He also recalled the final 2 months to be turbulent, as team members were not meeting deadlines, and with Capcom putting the pressure on the team to release the game on time, they were forced to do so in an unfinished state. With this knowledge, I was pretty surprised with the quality of the final product, which in my opinion ended up being a solid installment, despite the occasional glitches here and there. But hey, no video game is perfect, unless you're named Kid Icarus Uprising. Mega Man 3 introduces new elements and mechanics that add variety to the level design and will later become staples of the classic series. First and foremost, this game marks the debut of the Slide, a simple yet effective mobility tool that allows players to pass through narrow passageways, dodge traps, and evade certain enemy projectiles. Additionally, the Slide enables faster navigation through levels, adding a new layer of strategy to the movement of the game. For such a simple move, the Slide allows for some creative applications, which is nice to see. Alongside this new mechanic, Mega Man 3 also introduces a beloved companion, the faithful robotic doggo Rush. He serves as an evolution of the item system from Mega Man 2, providing players with additional mobility tools. You have the Rush Coil, which helps you jump to higher ground. Rush Jet allows you to fly around to reach areas or platforms that are otherwise unreachable with Rush Coil. And the Rush Marine, which, to be honest, it's pretty niche, but it lets you navigate underwater like a submarine, so there's that. Some levels even require the usage of these tools to progress after acquiring them. More on that later. Thankfully, you will have your trusty game manual to keep you up to speed, because otherwise players wouldn't go into the game with this knowledge. The inclusion of these mechanics gave the designers more creativity and freedom to build the levels, offering more variety in their challenges. There's also less reliance on level-specific gimmicks here. Relatively speaking, the stages feel simpler and easier for the player to digest, while still retaining some of the difficulty from previous games. That said, unique gimmicks are still present in some capacity. Take Magnet Man stage for example. Unsurprisingly, it utilizes a magnetic force mechanic, combining it with the vanishing blocks, yep, the same vanishing blocks from the previous games, to create a unique challenge. Side note, I really enjoyed how this stage was designed, as it offers a much better execution of the vanishing blocks. Players can see the locations of the platforms before committing to their jumps, making the sections more manageable, something the previous game didn't quite get right. Yeah, that's right, I'm looking at you, Heatman, don't think I forgot, alright? You won't see unique mechanics like Quickman's lasers from the previous game. I found the stages to be more action-focused this time around, giving the player greater versatility and movement, while still incorporating some tricky platforming sequences. Despite these changes, the game somewhat maintains the pacing of its predecessors. Mega Man still moves at the same speed and shoots the same way, ensuring a familiar yet refined experience. With new mechanics means new obstacles to face. So how are these new additions implemented in the stages? After all, the game should want you to be aware and familiarize yourselves with these new tools at your disposal. So you'd have situations like Sparkman stage, featuring narrow pathways where the only way forward is by sliding, while other stages include high platforms, subtly prompting players to search for something in their kit for a tool that can help them reach those locations. Not every stage integrates these mechanics in the same way or utilizes them all together, as they each follow different structures, but there is one stage that I found that blends these elements together, and that's going to be our main focus for today's video. How do these new mechanics get interwoven with the classic level design we've come to know? Before we begin, this video is sponsored by no one. This is a small channel. What were y'all expecting? Still though, I appreciate if you guys subscribe to the channel. I really want to get to 1K subs, and we're more than halfway, so it would really mean a lot to me if you guys help me reach that milestone. Now without further delay, let's get right into it. Keeping the tradition of the previous games, we start in a plain area within rocky plateaus, later on solidifying the construction site motif. An environment we're pretty familiar with since it's almost like Gutsman's stage from Mega Man 1. Looking at them side by side, it's pretty telling the artists got better at designing the sprites and the aesthetics for the levels. Granted, Heartman's stage doesn't have much going for it aside from the mountains and clouds in the background, but they still put a lot of work in the details. Most of the levels in this game have some pretty good sprite work, making them more interesting to look at than the previous games. Moving forward, we are greeted by an enemy called Have-Su-Bee, which is a weird name, I'm not gonna lie, but we're just gonna roll with it. These guys fly above the player and they drop a hive of smaller bees, similar to the peepees in Mega Man 2. These guys are really annoying, and they'll follow you around with full intentions of making your life miserable. I guess you can say they are hard to deal with.
This guy stinks!
Damn, tough crowd, huh? You can try to move away and take care of them one by one, but these guys are surprisingly elusive, which makes it really unlikely that you'll get rid of all of them in time before you get hit. So the safest way to get rid of them is to move away from them before they spawn and try to lead them off screen. I don't exactly know if this was intentional. It could just be a huge oversight from the developers, or likely a consequence of rushed development. Personally, I would have rather had them just work like the peepees. They were still annoying, but it was mostly by the context in which they were used. Still though, this section serves as a way to introduce these enemies' gimmicks, and will not be the last time you will see them. Unfortunately. In the next section, you'll see some green pipes on the floor. When you step into their tiles, you have a small amount of time to evade their attacks. As long as you keep moving and don't stop, you will not get hit. The clear contrasting color between the rocks and the pipes serves as a good way to warn the player about these obstacles as well as introducing them to it. It's interesting how this design technique has evolved throughout the years. Capcom still uses this design choice in some of their recent games, like in Resident Evil 4 Remake, using yellow lines to highlight breakable objects as well as telling players where to go. The application is completely different, but the idea of using colors to convey something to the player remains the same. I also like how they put multiple of them in a non-eventful area. Gives us enough room to know how they function. Right afterwards, you are greeted by a small passageway. Man, if only there was a way to get past this. Well, if you're one of the lucky few that read the game manual, then you won't have any problems. But let's disregard the manual for a moment. Let's assume that we're entering this blind. No external information has been given to us. We'd have to figure out how to get past this small gap. Thankfully, the NES controller did not have many buttons, so with a bit of experimentation with the button combinations, you can figure out how to learn to slide. Even with the factor of the game manual, the stage does well enough to introduce these new elements in areas that give the player enough breathing room. A little side comment, my first playthrough was with the Legacy Collection, and it was a blind playthrough, so I wasn't aware that this was the game they introduced the slide mechanic. I just saw the gap, started pressing button combinations that made sense to me, and then boom bam bop, I learned how to slide, so yeah. Immediately after, we get to see the same green pipes as before. This time around, there's a health item waiting at the end. Now this section is completely optional, you don't have to take that item. If you have full health, you can just take the ladder and proceed to the next section. But if you did take some damage, that health item could be really useful. Whether it was intentional or not, this small section combines both elements that we've seen previously and develops a unique challenge to the player. Now you can try to walk your way to the item, but you run the risk of getting caught by the one-ons. But what if we use the slide instead? I mean, the slide can make Mega Man move faster, so surely this can work, right? I am speed. In 2 rooms, they introduced 2 elements and later developed a challenge where the player can experiment with this new mechanic and get rewarded for doing so. Just a well-designed section. Taking the ladder upwards, we are greeted by a Hammer Joe, and it seems that he has the high ground on us. This is another instance of the level introducing a new mechanic. This time, however, is not a mechanic that is tied to Mega Man's moveset like the slide, but rather it's external, like the weapons. Whether you read the manual or not, you search in your toolbox to look for anything useful and find that there is something occupying a slot in the menu. Oh hey, what's up, Rush? And like I stated previously, he can create platforms that can propel Mega Man to higher areas. This is the first time we get to see an item given to us from the start of the game, meaning that we will likely see sections where it's required to use him to progress. Case in point, this stage. Now you reach the higher ground, cool. But there's another problem. You have to deal with the Hammer Joe, who tanks 8 buster shots to take out. The area is a little cramped, but you can jump over the projectiles with good timing. Keep in mind that you have to shoot him preemptively or slightly after he attacks. Otherwise, the projectile will block all buster shots. We take care of him and move on to the next room. Going up another ladder, we are greeted by a familiar face, back with familiar tricks. Yep, the Monk King is back. This time, however, instead of waiting underneath vines, they hang around the ceiling and they also become fully proximity-based enemies. In Mega Man 2, once they spawned in, you could just wait for them to attack, giving us the opportunity to retaliate. That is not the case this time around since these guys have learned and they adapted. They now wait for the player to get close to initiate their assault. The first Monk King can be taken out safely from a distance, and they take a good amount of shots to defeat them. The second one is an entirely different story. For you to progress, you'll have to get close to him, which means that you'll have to deal with the ferocious and angry monkey trying to steal the bananas you worked so hard to get in Mega Man 2. He can't steal my bananas. These bananas are mine. But wait, you'll quickly realize that these guys are ridiculously fast. Their movement speed actually outpaces Mega Man's normal run speed. If you try to casually walk to the ladder, there's a high chance you'll get hit at least once. Man, if only there were some way to outspeed them. Oh wait, there is. The slide is such an important mechanic for this section, and it really ingrains into you that you can use it as a mobility tool. One thing I noticed is that the first Monk King is, well, at least seemingly, deliberately placed to where we can attack from a safe distance. And we also get the information that these guys take a lot of hits to kill. So once we get to the second one, not having a way to preemptively attack, the only way to get away safely is to avoid combat and keep moving. Of course, this is all assuming that you don't have the necessary Robot Master weapons to deal with them. Once again, climbing up another ladder, you encounter a big life energy guarded by a Hammer Joe. If you took some damage from the Monk Kings, it can be a good idea to dispatch the Joe to obtain it. There's enough distance between the enemy and the player to react to the attack, and the ladder makes it easy for the player to dodge them. The next room is basically a culmination of the previous room. A Monk King is in your way, and there's another ladder at the far left of the room. Like before, just bait the attack and tactically use the slide to move quickly and get yourself to the ladder. Moving on to the next room, you find another small gap to slide through, just a reminder that you still have this tool. And then immediately, we get introduced to another enemy. Or more like a familiar enemy, but with a twist. The Pickle Man Bull. You get to see them while you stay in this small space beneath them, showcasing that they don't fall down and just stay in their lane. This gives you a safe zone to shoot from, allowing you to learn that the machine itself is indestructible and that you should focus on the driver instead. They definitely put some thought when making this room, as once again placing the player in a relatively safe spot and giving them the chance to figure out how these enemies function. And with 3 buster shots in the head, that's all it takes to take them down. You are immediately put to the test as you'll encounter another Pickle Man Bull, this time in a cramped hallway. It's a small check to see if the player learned how to handle these guys. Now you're encountered 2 routes. First time we see a branching path in this level. If you pick the bottom route, you'll safely reach a ladder leading you to the next room. Now you can only reach this part of the room if you decide to take the bottom route. You are now greeted by 2 normal meds, with the one high up guarding small life energies. They utilize the same proximity-based mechanic that we've established with the Monk Kings, so once you get in close, they'll start shooting. But they put themselves open for our own attacks. There's a small window of opportunity, but with good timing you can land a shot before they even have the chance to fire. Okay, let's stop here. Let's backtrack a little bit, because we haven't covered the top route yet. In this route, you'll encounter another Pickle Man Bull and a... Is that what I think it is? Now that we've reached the topic of E-Tanks, I will say that they're very easy to obtain in this game. Most of the time you can obtain them by using Rush, or just stumble upon them normally. It does make the game easier, but hey, you won't see me complain about it, alright? Give me all the E-Tanks, alright? Give me all of them! Stop getting distracted, Delta. Focus! Taking the ladder from this route takes you to the same room, but on the left side. I already explained this room, so we're moving on. We see a road with the same green pipes from before, but this time it combines them with the bees that we see in the first section of the level. This part serves as a culmination of the elements introduced earlier, blending them together for one final challenge. Once again, the slide proves invaluable here. Its speed allows you to evade threats efficiently, and with good timing, you can move off screen to despawn the bees, clearing the way without taking unnecessary damage. The issue I have with this section is that there isn't a reliable way to get past the bees without turning back. They spawn in before you can reach the end, effectively blocking your path, and since stopping isn't an option due to the one-ons attacking, the whole sequence becomes chaotic. While having this as the stage's final challenge was a solid idea in theory, the way the bees are designed disrupts the flow it aims to create. I personally would have replaced the bees with ground-based enemies like the Mets. Since the player has already encountered Mets in previous rooms, this section could serve as a knowledge check for the player to time their shots while they keep moving forward. That way you can keep the pacing while keeping the challenge engaging. But that's just me though, there might be some people out there that like the challenge the way it is. I just think the enemy combinations wasn't a good mix, that's all. Alright, I think we're done with this level. This is the last section. Going down to the ladder here, Oh, wait a minute. I think my pizza's here. Y'all didn't think I forgot about this guy, did y'all? This is Breakman, or you might know him better as Proto Man. He is also one of the elements added to the game. He's like the mini-boss of the game. You confront him in some other stages, sometimes you fight him, sometimes you don't, but the bottom line is that this guy is not your friend. At least not yet. Typically, your fights with him take place on a flat surface, but Heartman's stage is an exception. Here, the floor has a staircase-like layout, which changes the dynamic of the fight compared to the other encounters. Breakman is pretty simple to understand. If you get close, he's gonna jump and shoot in a manner similar to Mega Man. On the other hand, if you keep your distance, he'll continue moving forward but will still stay grounded until he closes the gap again. I mentioned how in the other stages, you fight him in a flat floor, so the dynamic of those fights in particular would have you go from the farthest opposite side he's running from and shoot him. Whenever he got close, you could just slide underneath him as long as you knew the timing of his jumps. But because the terrain here is not a flat surface, it drastically changes the strategy to use in the fight. Once you defeat Breakman, the ground explodes and you fall into a room with a big life energy, a way to restore some of the health you possibly lost during the fight. Afterwards, you drop down the ladder to meet a Big Eye type enemy. One of my main criticisms of the first Mega Man game was how frustrating it was to deal with the Big Eyes due to their inconsistent movement and the lack of tools to counter them. This game brings back the Big Eye concept, but refines it. Instead of a randomized mix of short and long jumps, they now have a single predictable big jump. This allows you to focus on their attack pattern and time your slide accordingly to evade them effectively, resulting in these sections being less frustrating to deal with. Once that's done, you can finish delivering the bananas to Hardman. I really like the structure of the level. It introduces elements in a simple and digestible way, making it easy for the player to learn the mechanics and understand their functionalities. That said, I do wish some of these elements weren't directly connected to one another. What I mean is that the stage could benefit from spreading out its challenges more evenly. For example, instead of having the Monk Kings back to back, the level could introduce them in one section, then transition to the Pickle Man room before circling back to the Monk Kings or Green Pipes. This would help create a better sense of variety and pacing throughout the stage. But overall, I think this stage does a great job of introducing and expanding the game's unique elements, both in terms of stage design and Mega Man's mechanics. Just like the last game, once the main stages are cleared, we go directly to Dr. Wily's Well, this is new. Yep, that's right. There's another set of levels to go through before we put the old man in a retirement home. As I mentioned earlier, these levels are known as the Doc Robot stages. While they reuse the locations of previous levels and retain their aesthetics, their difficulty gets ramped up a little bit. In a way, they sort of act as remixed versions of the original stages, reusing the visuals while offering a different and more difficult experience. I won't do a deep dive into them, but I will highlight some key elements that set them apart from their original versions. At this point in the game, the levels expect the player to be familiar with their weapons and rush. In some cases, it expands upon some of the challenges seen in the original versions. Like in Needleman's Doc Robot stage, it reintroduces the slide challenge from the original version but with a higher difficulty, while others introduce new ideas that leverage your expanded toolkit. Some of these concepts are executed well, while others don't exactly hit a home run. Once again, I bring up Needleman's stage. There's a section where it's literally required for you to use the rush jet to complete the level. The issue? If you run out of energy, you're basically soft-locked. The checkpoint system works against you as the only safe point is after the first Doc Robot fight. If you die before reaching the second boss, you'll respawn without enough energy to progress. To top it off, energy pickups don't respawn, and farming for them is a complete, utter nightmare thanks to the inconsistent drop rate. At this point, just give up. You're better off starting from the beginning. But still, by designing levels around your acquired tools, the game creates opportunities for fresh challenges that wouldn't have worked in the normal stages, similar to what the Wily stages did in Mega Man 2. But this case has also shown that it can all fall apart if not done properly. the lack of consideration for the player's resources, combined with the harsh checkpoint placement, results in a severe difficulty spike that can hinder the player's experience. And there's no alternate solution to the problem either, at least not one the level offers you. What should be a challenge of skill and resourcefulness turns into a frustrating roadblock. And before I forget to mention, in each of the Dock Robot stages, you have to fight 2 bosses, and each Dock Robot boss mimics the abilities of the Mega Man 2 Robot Masters. It's a cool throwback for those that have played the previous game, and if by chance this title is your first exposure to Mega Man, you got your diverse weapon selection giving you plenty of ways to deal with them efficiently, making the fights manageable. Despite the internal struggles during development, they still managed to create well-designed levels. They're not the most exciting or flawless, of course, as some ideas feel underdeveloped and never fully realized. However, the team seemed to have a stronger grip on the level structure this time around. They found a variety of ways to implement the new mechanics. Whether it was used to navigate, progress, or dodge enemy attacks, they managed to expand on the formula they created, and I think that's what they were going for here. And with that, I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate if you guys liked and subscribed to support the content. And let me know what you guys think of the analysis in the comments. Also, if you guys liked Mega Man 3 over the past games. Personally, I enjoyed this game over the first 2, so I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts on that. But anyways, I won't keep you guys here any further, so have yourselves a good one, drink lots of water, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace out.